And welcome to the Season 19 Schedule Release Show. The day is here, Mike, one of my most favorite days of the offseason, and we get to break it all down. To the left of us, you're going to see the team schedule scrolling through all night long while we break some things down. Mike, how are you? Happy Schedule Release Day.
Hey, I'm doing great, Cam. And Cam, they say admitting you have a problem is the first step to recovery. But I don't know if I want to recover, man. I'm excited that we're here again for the third season for the Schedule Release Show. And yes, my name is Mike St. Green, and I am an SFL junkie.
You are an SFL junkie, and you are now an owner of the Houston Headhunters. A lot has changed since what? 3 weeks ago? That's all it's been. You know that, Mike, 3 or 4 weeks ago. So,
yeah, Cam, we signed off a few weeks ago after the championship game, man. I took a couple of weeks off, and that's when I realized, man, I missed this thing. I've watched something like 5 championship games in that time frame, and many other games, and gotten into the minor leagues here the past few weeks. So, man, the Schedule Release Show, to see what we have in store for us, 168 games. It's hard to believe that we have that in front of us this season, man, but I'm excited to see where everyone's gonna be in week 1 and beyond.
Same here, so let's go. Week 1, these are your convention matchups at HyperX Arena in Las Vegas. We start with game number 2000, Mike, of the SFL's history. DC at Baltimore. This comes just 1 week from today, Mike, is 10 years, the 10-year anniversary of the first SFL game. So we have that to celebrate next week, but then we have to celebrate game 2000, DC at Baltimore. DC, one of only 2 teams to beat the Vultures last season, and they will play Baltimore to start and end Season 19. London at Indianapolis, Mike. Chad Rowland, right off the jump, welcome his former team, the London Knights, to his new home in the Snake Pit, Indianapolis. That is going to be really exciting to see football being played there. Tulsa at Motor City. King Rashid, Defensive Rookie of the Year, just left Tulsa to go to Motor City. Now he welcomes his former team, and Motor City makes their debut in Michigan. Minnesota at Canton. 2 expansion teams, not in the same division, Mike, but an excellent matchup with 2 teams that have made huge splashes all offseason long and are ready for their opening season. How could we take this long to get to Vice Wars? Denver and Las Vegas. Vice Wars writes another chapter, and, of course, Las Vegas hosting the convention and hosting the game. Atlanta at Arizona. Remember this, Mike? We went on Twitter. We were talking about arachnids and insects and all kinds of crazy stuff, and they're going to be playing face-to-face at the convention week number 1, a surprising rematch thanks to Atlanta moving from the East Division to the or actually remaining in the East Division and bringing in some new faces. Los Angeles at Carolina, also in week 1. A big game, 2 teams that know each other all too well. Logan Jack, the new GM of LA, playing his former team for the first time in Carolina. They've swapped many players over the years, and they get another chapter in that one as well. And how about Lone Star and Fort Worth, Mike? Just a sensational matchup, sensational rivalry. Fort Worth still has never beaten Lone Star. Lone Star coming off runner-up status. And those are your headliners in week 1. Other games, Seattle at Charleston, Portland at Vancouver, Queen City at Sioux Falls, Jacksonville at Mexico City, Louisiana at Florida, San Diego at Houston. So, Mike, of the headliners, which games are you most excited for?
Yeah, Cam, week 1 is always exciting, and man, but what stands out to me the most is is that London, my former team, going up against Chad Rowland and his new team over there in Indianapolis. Chad Rowland was a huge reason in what London built over there the past couple of seasons, and this is going to be a great matchup to start season 19. And I'm pretty sure both sides are excited to hear that, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a great battle between those two once they see what they have in front of them on the schedule.
Tulsa and Motor City, so much support there's going to be there in Las Vegas. And Deion Hawkins is going to be coming off of a marriage He's getting married next month. Congratulations to Dion, and him and his beautiful bride are going to be flying out to Las Vegas and spending some of their honeymoon with us that following day, and to see the Tulsa Desperados take on Motor City. You just can't make that stuff up, Mike. I mean, that is prime time television, and I'm looking forward to that one. What else is on your docket?
Well, I'll tell you what, Cam, I like shiny new things, and especially, since free agency started just a couple of days ago, these two expansion teams, man, have been great in free agency. We didn't know what type of matchup this would be a couple of days ago, but now that we see some of these names coming across the board and who these guys are going to have on the roster, I think both of these teams are winning free agency right now. And that's the Canton Classics going up against the Minnesota Legend. I think both of these teams, they've come in like a wrecking ball. As I've heard a song say before, these guys have made a huge impression on me and the league. And so what better than the two teams that have really probably made the biggest splash coming in to see the first game against one another, Canton against Minnesota.
I can't believe you got a Miley Cyrus reference 6 minutes into discussing the season 19 schedule. That's unheard of.
Did Miley Cyrus sing that? I thought that was I don't know. I don't know all these artists, but I heard the song.
Now I don't know what's worse, you referencing the song or me immediately knowing who sang it. So you've kind of thrown me under the bus there too. I don't appreciate that, Mike. You're getting to know the South quite well, and Fort Worth and Lone Star. This Lone Star has a lot of fun during this game. They really enjoy playing Fort Worth. They love sort of twisting the knife on these toros. Fort Worth is not having fun. And in this chapter, Doug Day, who used to play for Lone Star, is now playing for Fort Worth. I'm not sure that anyone in the league's history has ever played for both teams. I think Doug Day might be the first. And so he's crossed enemy territory, enemy lines. Fort Worth has Marcus Dunhill at quarterback, right? Talk about ushering in a new era. Yeah. And Fort Worth is going to want this one, especially given that Lone Star are your defending runners-up. They had an amazing postseason run. They have to be the favorites to win the South Division this season. They have a new ownership group, a new reinvigorated mentality to pressing on in the SFL, and I can't wait for this matchup.
Yeah, a new ownership group, Cam, but it doesn't feel, new.
No.
A lot of those guys that were there last season are still there. It's kind of like a change of hands type thing, as opposed to, these guys are brand new and being new to that organization and new to that division. And man, as you mentioned, I'm getting immersed into the South Division, man, and it kind of hits different. You could tell that it's real rivalries over here. Mexico City, Houston, Lone Star, Houston, Fort Worth. Fort Worth's mad at Houston because they think we copied their logo, but so it's going to be an interesting division. But this matchup in particular, Fort Worth, Marcus Dunhill coming in, have they finally solved that revolving door at quarterback, that they can keep a quarterback for a few seasons here? That remains to be seen, but the work is going to be cut out for them going up against Lone Star. As you mentioned, runners up in the championship game that we just had a few weeks ago. And these guys have basically, they lost a couple of key players to retirement, but these guys have reloaded, pretty much brought everybody back and reloaded, as you mentioned, with people like Doug Day and I'm sorry, the tight end, Garrison Blue. These guys are going to be great again this season. As you mentioned, I think they're going to be favorites in this division, and probably favorites to try to repeat make it to the SFL championship game.
Garrison Blue, B. Robo coming over from Louisiana, going to Lone Star. They play in week 3. We'll get to some more of those matchups later down the line. Coming up next on the Schedule Release Show, we'll break down the rest of the week 1 slate, talk about some of the key matchups from opening weekend when the Schedule Release Show continues here on ESTV. And welcome.
franchise history. And then, of course, we know about Florida. They are perennial,
Of the week one slate, talk about some of the key matchups from opening weekend when the schedule release show continues here on ESTV. Welcome back to the schedule release show season 19 edition here on ESTV. Alongside Mike St. Green, I'm Cameron Irvine. Remaining week one slate we have not really gotten to touch on yet. Seattle, they're one of the new teams in the SFL. They go to Charleston. Tough cross-country road trip to take on a playoff team. Tough start for the Nemesis. Portland at Vancouver, an early divisional matchup in the Pacific Division. Portland will be looking to make some noise there with a new quarterback. Vancouver will have a new quarterback too, Christian Brown. Queen City at Sioux Falls. O.J. Bruin's debut for the Queen City Corsairs. Queen City, Sioux Falls, always a great rivalry. Mexico City and Jacksonville. Jacksonville will have a new quarterback too. Mexico City got Matt Wilson. You know they got Matt all the time. Louisiana at Florida, a new East Division clash. They will face, just like Baltimore and D.C., to start and end the season. And then San Diego at Houston, the Headhunters make their debut against the Mavericks. So of those 6 games, Mike, which one catches your eye?
Well, of course, I'm interested in the debut down there in Houston, but the new division rivalry that's been formed is the Louisiana and Florida matchup. That's going to be very interesting. Obviously, Louisiana's coming off one of their best seasons in their franchise history, and then of course we know about Florida. They are perennial, SFL championship contenders, season in and season out. And it's going to be interesting to see that matchup. And Louisiana has some key losses from their roster. It's going to be interesting to see how they fill out their roster and adjust going forward. They lost Colin Hart off of that team from last season. That was big for them in the running game. And in Florida, man, Boletsky, reigning MVP, coming back for another season 19, and going to be an interesting division matchup to start the season off over there.
It's going to be a good one, and I have a feeling that by the end of the season, Florida and Louisiana aren't going to like each other very much. They don't really have a lot built in to any kind of rivalry, so to speak. But Louisiana or Florida and Jacksonville, I should say, the new players in the East Division, and Louisiana and Atlanta are not going to give that up easy. I'm gonna go with Jacksonville, Mexico City. Mike, because Matt Wilson has a chance to become the first quarterback in league history with 50,000 passing yards, and he can do that in week one against the Jacksonville Kings at the convention. It'll be sad that Matt Wilson is not going to be at the convention with us this year, but we'll certainly get a chance to celebrate his milestone, and it comes between two longtime rivalries. Jacksonville and the Santa Fe Gorillas back then met in the playoffs. And have had plenty of meetings since then and a lot of classics. So it'll be really interesting to see how both teams reload.
Yeah, interesting matchup indeed. It's just, Jacksonville, they had just kind of went through a rebuild a couple of seasons ago. It looked like they had gotten back on track, with Marcus Dunhill at quarterback, and they built a great team, last season, making the playoffs after missing the season before for the first time in a long time. And then now, man, lo and behold, all these new teams come in, and Mike all departs over to Canton and takes a couple of guys with him, and now the Kings seem to be in rebuild mode again. So interesting matchup. It's going to be a tough matchup for them going up against Mexico City in the first game, with a lot of new faces coming in. So, great matchup though, and traditionally, and I'm sure Jacksonville, they'll bounce back just like they did over the past couple of seasons.
Coming up when we return on the schedule release show, I get a chance to sit down with the president of Next Level Sports and Entertainment, Michael Blake, to talk about the 2022 convention in Las Vegas and Next Level's presence at the convention, the broadcast of opening day, and so much more, as the SFL and NXT have agreed to a 2-year extension through the winter 2024 season. We'll have that and so much more when the schedule release show returns here on ESTV. right, today we're here with Michael Blake, president of Next Level Sports and Entertainment. Michael, thanks for being here with us.
Cameron, great to be with you. My only real condition is I'm trying to figure out how do I actually get into one of the games. So you got to help me, get my avatar game going. But it's great to be with you on behalf of Next Level Sports and Entertainment.
Yeah, you would be joining nearly 700 people now that have players in the SFL, growing like a weed, just like Next Level. We're super happy to be partnered with y'all. And in 2022, it's been a big year so far. And what has been happening and what is about to happen for Next Level?
Well, we're excited because we have great partners like you, Cameron, and that's why I'm so grateful for what we're able to do with the Simulation Football League and SFL. For anyone that doesn't know, Next Level Sports and Entertainment, we're the only Black-owned sports TV network nationally owned in the country, led by our owner and CEO, Andre Gudger. More than 20 million U.S. homes, more than 101 million global homes. Everything from SFL on the weekends, on Saturday and Sundays, to HBCU basketball, to what we have on our studio show when it comes to the USFL by Emory Hunt, to poker, to billiards, to MMA, all the things in between, international basketball. We're here to send the message. And what we're most excited about is where we're moving forward. And one of the ways we're moving forward is by engaging with in-person events with SFL. I can't wait to be out in Vegas on July 11th. We're going to send that message of how we can have 28 teams and so many players come together to demonstrate that this wave of esports is not just something that's a theoretical conversation. It's here to stay. So if you want to go to the next level, then you have to go with SFL. And that's why we're partnering up once again for the 2022 season and beyond.
There are so many different levels to sports and esports in general. And we're trying to blend the two here at the SFL and with NXT, right, Michael? Because it's not about it doesn't have to be about thumbs or athleticism or necessarily talent, right? All that you have to be is a person with a story, right? You just have to be a human with a face, and we want to tell those stories. And I know that Next Level is very big on telling the stories that may slip under the radar, right? That may fall through the cracks. That's what the SFL is all about, right? We're talking about average, everyday, Americans and people from all over the world who just want to be seen and just want to be heard. And that's what the SFL provides, that platform. How does that mesh with the NXT philosophy for the network?
When you think about, if someone was watching the NFL, for example, and we know the kind of culture that exists on Sunday, Monday, and Thursday nights from that, how everyone gets drawn in and captivated by it in the same way they would for the Super Bowl. But when you think about you had a great tweet recently, Cameron, that really resonated for me around how the margin of victory for the NFL was essentially like 11.9 points per game. SFL was 11.2. When you think about how games decided by 8 points or less, both were 50%. Essentially, both 23% games 3 point or less. So that same energy that someone can have while watching an NFL game is the same kind of energy that they can have by being a part of the SFL game. And so when we think about how do we mobilize, how do we get people to think about HBCU lacrosse and what we're doing with NCL, the next collegiate league, because that's that next wave of what's happening with sports. How do we think about how you can be engaged around the excitement of all the different sports, whether it be, again, poker, billiards, etc. It's that next wave. And so in that same manner, for us to achieve that, then we want people to really get in the game. And when we think about whether it be your phone or your tablet or your computer, when you sync it up to your linear device, it's the appreciation that something changes when you are a part of the process. And so, what's happening in Vegas and getting so many people together in person to have that kind of kinetic energy is transformative. But lastly, Cameron, this is about demonstrating to everybody, this is a new wave. When people have on their headsets and their audio sets, when people are thinking about virtual reality, when people are trying to figure out what the metaverse, when they're thinking through this different engagement that one can have, it's saying to you, whether if you are a janitor, a bus driver, whether you walk down the street, whether you drive, whether if you're a nurse or a teacher or a doctor, everyone has an ability to go to the next level because everyone has the ability to partner up with SFL. And so that's why we're excited about this next wave and demonstrating the opportunities by utilizing technology to allow more people to get in the game.
One last question for you, Michael. In Vegas, you're actually going to get to see the passion of these players, these coaches, these owners, which we don't get to see a lot on TV because we're spread out all over the world. Are you ready for this? Are you ready to see the energy in this building? It is it's something else. It's pretty exciting.
Well, look, I'm a Jamaican American who usually has West Indian Day Parade on Brooklyn, even though I'm from the Bronx. So I doubt there's an energy that can match that kind of energy. I'm a Yankees fan. I'm a Rangers fan who's been excited about what's been happening in the playoffs. And so we want to bring that same type of energy that's going on here to what's going to be going on with SFL, and so I think we're ready. I think we're prepared. But, now it's about demonstrating how do we sustain that energy all day, every day. And this is what I want people to leave with. Cameron, what you are building is incredible. It's exceptional. It's exciting. And the partnership of how we demonstrate to people is very real. Everyone in their lives wants to do something different. Everyone in their lives wants to go to the next level. And that's why what's happening in Vegas, what's going to be on our station and being the media partner with you is so exciting. So we appreciate all that we're doing together.
Michael Blake, president of Next Level Sports and Entertainment. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for Michael Blake stopping by and getting a chance to chat with us and talk about NXT. The guy's a busy man. He's got NXT under control over there. Next Level's going to have a great year, and we are going to have a great season over there as well as on ESTV. But Mike, now we're talking about the West Division, the new look West Division. Welcome in San Diego. Who you got?
Yeah, let's start out in the desert, and we're not talking about Las Vegas. Let's start out in Arizona. And Eddie Gage, he typically complains about having one of the tougher schedules. But in this case, I think he could be right, but I don't think he really meets the meat of that schedule. Well, just looking at it, maybe early on he does a little bit. He has a good mix, though, Cam. I think he has a good balance to the schedule. I don't think it's too tough. I don't think it's too hard just as far as the order of the opponents that he's going to have to prepare for. So I think he's going to have to live with this one and, take his lumps here or there if he has to. But I think Eddie's going to always have something up his sleeves, and he's going to be competitive as he typically is out there with the Arizona Scorpions.
There's no gauntlet part of the schedule.
Yeah.
There's not as much meat in any particular area. Which takes us to San Diego, right? Because actually looking at their schedule, I mean, at Florida, at Denver, at Mexico City is just brutal. Three weeks in a row. They do have a bye week in there, but the bye week comes against Denver, not Florida or Mexico City, so they would have liked to have that in a different spot. But if they can just, if they can get out of that 1-2, right, and steal one, I mean, the schedule could have been a lot worse for San Diego. They actually, 4 of their last 5 home games are against teams that did not make the playoffs last year. They have a couple of road games to start the season, but Houston and Arizona did not make the playoffs last year. And so there's the meat of their schedule is certainly in the middle, but they have some opportunities here to pick up some wins and improve this squad. We haven't seen as much on San Diego this offseason as some of the other teams. There's still a little bit of mystery what their roster is going to look like. But if they got Gunnar Lewis and Liam Hammer and Scar Patterson and all those guys coming back and in that air it out offense, they can beat anybody on any given day.
Yeah, Cam, I was going to say they have Scar Patterson definitely back in the fold. And if what weapons are they going to put around him is going to be key because they definitely are explosive all-stars and record setters all over that offense as far as in the quarterback and receiving core goes.
So Denver or Vegas?
Let's go to Denver. As now there's a lot of intrigue around this team. Is Jeremy Vega going to come back and coach this team? And that's going to be huge if he does. But let's look at the middle of that schedule as well. I think that's an intriguing stretch, 5 games or so right there in the middle of that schedule. Atlanta, San Diego, we just talked about. Lone Star in Jacksonville and Arizona. That's going to probably tell us a lot about who the Night Wings are going to be this coming season.
Las Vegas, we mentioned at the top of the show, there are 4 of 5 on the road. And a game in particular that we haven't touched on is Week 13. They go to Atlanta. Last season, Vegas embarrassed Atlanta in Vegas. And you don't think Atlanta remembers that? Atlanta's going to be mad and they got to play them in week 13 and then at Arizona in week 14. You don't think Arizona's mad about all these 1-point losses to Vegas? So they're going to be playing some teams that are really upset at Vegas. That's going to be personal for them at the end of the season. And then they also have road games at Louisiana and at San Diego. They have a bye week before the Louisiana game, but the game is on a Thursday, so they actually lose a date off the bye week. So yeah, it's a bye, but it's a smaller bye than maybe some of the others. So 4 or 5 to end the season on a road at Atlanta, at Arizona, against some teams that are real angry, at Vegas, and that's a pretty tough way to close things out. But I mean, they could look at it like, oh well, we get Arizona twice, good for us. Because we like playing those Scorpions. So that is a look at the West Division. And when we come back, we're going to talk some headliners from Season 19's schedule and touch on some of the most interesting games throughout the calendar. We'll be right back on ESTV. Back here on the schedule release show, and now we're looking at some of the marquee matchups on the schedule. Let's start with Florida at Denver. This comes your way in week 12. Before Baltimore became a powerhouse, Florida and Denver were the class of the SFL, the only other teams in the player progression era to win multiple championships. Florida won titles 10, 11, and 12, and Denver took home the crown in season 13 and 16, the latter against the Storm. Where are these two teams now, Mike? Well, they're building up coaching staffs, giving new opportunities as the two hope to one day reclaim glory once more. This will be only the second time the two have played each other since that epic classic in the title game. And there are rumors swirling, Mike, that Jeremy Vega may return to coaching this season. So that would add an even bigger level of intrigue in that game late in the season.
Yeah, that would be very interesting if Jeremy did decide to come off of his couch or wherever he's been over the past couple of seasons and come out of the owner's box and come back down to the sideline, because anytime he does that, Denver seems to have a great turnaround and have a great season. So it'll be interesting to see. But Denver has lost a lot over the past this off season. But I did see come across the wire just today. They did re-sign a couple of guys. Ari Mills and Logan Keel did come back to the team after they hadn't signed their deals up until now. But some things that they're going to need to replace, but I think Denver still has some things in place. Bailey O'Shaughnessy coming back again, and is it Eric Price? He's coming back for a third season as well. And of course, going up against Florida, these guys are historically great matchup. Kramer Jackman with a huge field goal, to walk off his career and win the championship in season 16, as you just mentioned, or else Florida would have been a 4-time champion at that particular time. So great matchup, always an intriguing matchup. And by week 13, that late in the season, both of these teams would have probably figured some things out, and it should be an exciting matchup as far as playoff positioning goes coming down the stretch.
Let's talk about the Vultures for a little bit. Baltimore at Indianapolis in Week 9 and hosting Carolina in Week 10. Wherever Roland goes, Mike, Baltimore will haunt him. Can't get away. London doesn't get him on the schedule this year. Roland does. After a leave of absence, took him off their championship run. Roland had to face the Vultures in division while in London, and now will welcome the defending champs to Indy in Week 9. This is interesting, Mike. The game is especially important for the Ramblers because of where it lands on the schedule. The only home game between Weeks 8 and 13 on Indy's schedule. Indianapolis is one of 4 teams with 3 straight on the road this season, so that is going to be a huge game for the Ramblers. And then for Carolina, Baltimore, the rivalry is full of history. Harish Prasad's injury to Carolina's surprising upset in their previous meeting. Baltimore is always ready and willing to poke fun at their little brother. We'll hear Sky Rats all week long. That's just what they do. And, of course, Carolina welcomes Baltimore into their division this season. I'm sure we'll have a bunch of memes for that game, Mike. But yeah, Baltimore's got some pretty juicy matchups on the back half of their schedule.
Yeah, sorry, Chad, but man, you as Cam mentioned, you cannot get away from the Vultures. They seem to always find their way onto your schedule. But what I find interesting about this game is that Baltimore is in Chad's head when they typically play a Chad Rowland team, or is that specific to London? That London, even though they did beat Baltimore a season ago towards the end of the season, is that a London thing? But we'll see by week 9. Chad will pretty much get a idea what his team looks like and get a feel for what they can and can't do on the field. And of course, he knows Baltimore very well, as you mentioned. He's met them several times over the past couple of seasons, and I'm pretty sure he knows what the key is to beating these guys. It's just going to be a matter of putting these guys in the right position and executing a game plan.
How about every game in Week 14, Mike, is going to be a rematch? It is a divisional rematch. Many will carry playoff implications. So the one division team you play twice, that team you are going to play in Week 14. That goes for everyone. Wins could result in season series sweeps, division winners, tiebreaker hell, and rivalries like Baltimore, D.C., Lone Star, Mexico City. That was a pretty good one in Week 14 last season. Atlanta, Jacksonville, Arizona, Vegas. We all know that Arizona has struggled to get over the Vegas hump. They may need that game in Week 14 to do something with their season. So this is going to be interesting. We've never had this before. It just fit the schedule well to basically, if you want to have all divisional games in the last week of the season with this format, well, you had to do all rematches. So this is going to be interesting.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. That Lone Star Mexico City, that should be, a great matchup in Week 14. And I'm pretty sure the division title or playoff implications are going to definitely be in play for that game for sure. And, as you mentioned, Arizona and Las Vegas, they always seem to play tough. And Arizona has had a hard time getting over the hump against them, also. So a couple of great matchups to close out the season. Playoff implications are usually somewhere on that schedule. Indianapolis and Minnesota the last week of the season. How would the 2 expansion teams be faring in that division coming down the stretch? And Tulsa, Sioux Falls, of course, they both made the playoffs. And, Sioux Falls, they have, their roster's looking a little thin right now. Will they take another step back as they had the past couple of seasons, or will they keep moving forward?
Couple more interesting, juicy matchups. Arizona, Houston in Week 7. Eddie has not been back to Houston since January of 2020, before the pandemic. Mike, that's how long it's been since Eddie was back in Houston, and now we'll be taking on the Headhunters. And then the matchup has lost just a little bit of luster with the announcement of Tom Pepper's retirement, but we do get Baltimore and Vancouver in Week 3. The game is at Baltimore. And, it's the championship game we didn't get. And I think Vancouver would like to prove a point. Hey, if we just would have been able to get to Baltimore, we would have beaten Baltimore. Just got tripped up by Lone Star. This is their chance to prove, that they're an elite team and a championship favorite there in week 3.
Yeah, and that Arizona-Houston matchup, it's near and dear to me for reasons different than me being an owner in Houston right now. But it was the first ever SFL matchup that I've ever witnessed. And as you mentioned, January of 2020, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was the end of January. I remember it like it was yesterday. It caught my eye, it intrigued me, and it's pretty cool now that I am owner in Houston that this is going to be the first time that these teams matched up, and here it is, first game I ever witnessed, and now I'm going to be owner in that matchup. So that's going to be pretty cool. And the one game throughout the entire schedule, throughout the whole 168 games that we're going to witness this season, that stood out to me as soon as I saw these schedules was the Vancouver at Baltimore matchup. We didn't get to see that, in the championship game, as a lot of us were anticipating, Vancouver being a number 1 seed and Baltimore being a 2, Vancouver being knocked off by Lone Star. But yes, it's going to, lose some of its luster without Tom Pepper, but man, slinging Christian Brown, as I like to call him, this guy, I think he has the potential to fill in his shoes very well. He's done a great job in the 3 seasons he was over in St. Louis. I'm looking forward to seeing him over there in Vancouver and see what he could do with the high-powered offense and see if he can keep it rolling over there.
So let's get to old faces, or old faces, new places. Is that what it is? It is, Mike. I can never get that right the first jump. It doesn't matter.
Old faces, new places.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many seasons I do this. I can never get it right the first time. But you mentioned Christian Brown. He's going back, not to St. Louis, but to Detroit, week 13. These are some other headliners for old faces, new places. Vancouver, Motor City, week 13. Week 13 is interesting, Mike. There's a lot of juicy matchups here. Los Angeles goes to Canton. That's Robert Johnson and Rob Ems taking on their former team. We mentioned Lone Star and Louisiana already in week 3. And here's another week 13 game. Charleston at Minnesota. Buchanan Simons, Jay Taylor, Johnny Bravo playing their former team as Charleston comes to town. And in fact, Charleston and Minnesota were kind of going back and forth on social media here recently about Charleston wondering how they're losing all their players to Minnesota. All of those games are in week 13, along with Jacksonville at Houston. Talon Steele will play his former team, the Kings, coming back to town. Some other good ones, Luther Gahn and Doug Day. Week 8, Louisiana at Fort Worth. Those guys, those former Revolution taking on Louisiana. We mentioned King Rashid going to welcoming Tulsa to his new home. But Marcus Dunhill is going to face his former team too, Fort Worth at Jacksonville in week 5. And then Dunhill will also play his former team, Atlanta, in week 9. There's so many on here. Portland, Queen City, which I think you might want to touch on in week 12. O.J. Bruin playing his squad. There's a lot to unpack here. What catches your eye?
Well, that Minnesota-Charleston matchup, it's like I said, they've been going back and forth on social media. A lot of those guys from Charleston have gone over to Minnesota, but Charleston has done a great job of replenishing that roster. They've had some great signings over there. Week 13, man, like I said, we're coming down the stretch at that point. No one can afford any mistakes, so that game is going to probably have a lot on the line at that time. I really expect the Legend to possibly have a solid season over there, especially once I've seeing how their roster is shaping up. But yeah, that's going to be an intriguing matchup with so many former Predators going over there to Minnesota. I'm highly looking forward to that matchup in week 13.
Portland at Queen City with O.J. Bruin is really fascinating. I'm just fascinated by Queen City in general. We really just don't know what we're going to get out of them. They got a new coaching staff over there, and Chris Komisak signed in. He signed with Canton, didn't he? Mike St. Green.
Yeah,
Chris Komisak. Yeah, yeah, and we know that Canton and Queen City are going to be playing each other in the same division on the schedule too. So there's a lot of intrigue in this kind of. I mean, it's been a wild offseason. We've signed almost 500 players in 9 days, and we had all that flurry of activity in the free agency show, and everything is just kind of flipped on its head. I think as we look closer at the divisions and all the schedules of the teams a little bit more closely as the show goes along, Mike, I think we're going to realize that teams that have been able to stick together this offseason, they're going to have an advantage, especially early.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, Cam. These teams, London, for instance, I think they've signed 21 players up until this point. Of course, Baltimore the same way. I think they've signed 21 of their guys. Charleston, as I've mentioned, even Houston, we're waiting for a couple of more. Yeah, waiting for a couple of more guys to come across the wire for Houston, and that would probably bring us up to about 18 or 19. So the teams that could avoid the draft, nothing against any of those great guys down in the minor leagues, but their value is not going to be as high. So they're going to have a longer time to come up to speed and get things rolling with the teams that they are going to be drafted to. So yeah, the teams that don't have to draft as many players and have a lot of rookies on their roster, they're going to have a huge advantage in the first few weeks of the season.
And sneaky LA has almost brought back almost their entire team, and nobody's really talking about that.
Yeah.
So good on the Lycans. They could be sneaky good this season. We'll take a look at their schedule more in depth a little bit later in the show. Coming up next, I get a chance to sit down with Canton's Vice President of Business Development. That is going to be an interesting interview because Canton is all in on building their SFL franchise right from the jump. The schedule release show rolls on when it returns next here on ESTV. Now with us, Josh Bach, the Canton Classics Vice President of Business Development, here on the Schedule Release Show. Josh, happy to be talking with you today.
Hey, it's an honor to be here, Cam.
So why the Canton Classics? Tell us a little bit about yourself. You're new to the SFL community and new to one of our new exciting teams. So how did you find us, and what's the future for Canton?
Very excited to be a part of this team in the capacity as business development. Christian Alacio and I have worked together on multiple projects in his racing career, and really have become good friends. He let me know about this opportunity that he had, and I quickly became excited. We started brainstorming, and lo and behold, we just started putting together some master plans on how to really help take this to the next level.
Well, the Canton Classic schedule is out, and you get to see the Minnesota legend first. Indianapolis is early. You got some pretty good good games with some of your new players playing their old teams. Portland in week 8, Vancouver in week 12, LA week 13, all that good stuff. But as a business development guy, what are you looking for in a schedule when this comes out? When you get the dates, you get the opponents. What's the drives the energy for you?
Well, I mean, starting at 7-11 with Minnesota, like starting out our very first game, super excited and stoked about that. Going right into that very next week, 6 days later, it looks like on the 17th. Mm-hmm. I'm an Indianapolis guy through and through. Racetrack, Indy 500 all the way. Live in Indianapolis, so being able to play Indianapolis is key. 2 expansion teams back to back as we're getting started. Super excited about that. And of course, down the road, a few games later, we got Seattle, which is Christian's hometown. So, it is exciting to be able to really dive in deep and get the greatest experience moving forward this year.
With a new team in Indianapolis and local ownership there, and then you and Christian based in Indy, I'm feeling a Indianapolis convention or something coming on here somewhere down the road because
there's no doubt about that.
We're building a good base in Indiana. Love to see that. The season is so close, just about a month away. Las Vegas gets us going at HyperX Arena at the Luxor, and it's just going to be an incredible venue and place to get this season started. What's got your juices flowing right now in the SFL and with Canton as we count down the days to start the season?
Just it's exciting. The role I'm playing as business development is really just formulating relationships. And, there's some work that we have been doing in Canton. And so a lot of those relationships will carry over, but just really getting into the community and building a fan base and, diving in. Both Christian, Eliseo, and I, of course, you got Adam and the whole team. Everyone is just very solid on that leadership front. But we're really tying into like community involvement. So Christian and I both have a background in working with nonprofits and just diving deep into the community. We want to do that in Canton, utilizing some of our relationships. I want to sit down with the mayor of Canton and other people and just let them know that a team like Canton, what we can do, and to help and assist and partner with them, at that root level. So super, super excited about all of that.
Spreading the Canton Classics message one person at a time. That's how you got to do it. And the Fatherhood Festival that you guys will be at will be a big part of that coming up in Canton, Ohio in a couple of weeks. It's a lot of fun.
That's coming up. Yeah, if anyone can head to Canton for that Fatherhood Festival, it's going to be an incredible event with all sorts of Hall of Famers and just representing fatherhood. It's an important thing that we all should focus time and energy on. We're happy to be a part of that as well.
Josh Bach, Canton Vice President of Business Development for our SFL Classics. Thanks, Josh, for joining us.
Hey, thank you, Cam.
Thanks to Josh Bach for the great interview here on the Schedule Release Show. Central Division time, Mike. Indy, Minnesota, Sioux Falls, Tulsa. What schedule catches your attention?
Let's start with the Tulsa Desperados. Made the playoffs last season, had a great season after, having a number 1 overall draft pick the season before. And let's look at that bottom third of that season there, Cam. DC Dragons, Charleston Predators, Baltimore Vultures, and they finish up with another playoff team, the Sioux Falls Sparrows. So will they be in a position by the time they get to the bottom third of this season in a position to make the playoffs again? And if so, they are going to have a tough road to try to repeat as division champions and make it into the playoffs.
All right, I'll take Minnesota. Kind of an interesting schedule. Minnesota got to hold on for dear life early in the season because they got a lot of games on the road. But what interested me most is the home stretch on the back half of the schedule. They play Indianapolis twice, and Indy and Minnesota they're already talking about, engines not starting and all sorts of stuff on social media. Well, they got that game week 10 and week 14, but week 10 starts a 4-game homestand, but it's not an easy homestand. It's Baltimore coming to town, DC coming to town, Charleston coming to town. And I think the biggest question for me, Mike, is expansion teams get better as the season goes along, right? Mm-hmm. Teams get their feet under them and they start to gain some momentum. Is Minnesota a spoiler down the stretch for some of these teams that have high aspirations, right? Or do they end up the favorite because they're having such a good season and they're playing a team that played very well last season? So that 4 games in a row at home, very unique and unusual. That's going to define their season right there.
Yeah, and I think so, Cam. And I'll go over to Indianapolis Ramblers, and I'm going to go with the very start of the season. As we've already mentioned, that matchup against London. London definitely going to be a championship contender favorite this season. That's going to be a tough matchup for them. Obviously, a rivalry for them as well. Then they're going to meet a fellow expansion team. That second game going up against Canton. Canton is filling out that roster nicely. And then we're going to go back to, they're going to face Tulsa in week 3. So that's a tough way for an expansion team to start a season out, and their season could probably be made broken in the first couple of weeks of the season.
Sioux Falls lost GP Wells, but the schedule gods, they came out okay, did Sioux Falls, because they start with 2 in a row at home. Queen City, Minnesota, 2 teams trying to get their feet under them. Then at Motor City, at Indy. Of course, Indy's a new team. Motor City didn't make the playoffs last season. That's a pretty simple start for the Sioux Falls Sparrows. And then they do have a road game at Baltimore, but they get Baltimore off a bye. So they get 2 weeks to progress and get ready for the Vultures. They get a chance to scout an extra week of Baltimore film. And so that fell their way too. That meat of their schedule, week 8 through 10 at Baltimore versus Tulsa at Charleston. That's going to be a pretty tough stretch, but they got some bye weeks to bookend either side of that. And so while it could have been worse for Sioux Falls, I think it turned out pretty good for them. That's your Central Division. And when we come back, we'll talk about some of the things about this schedule that are unique to season 19 when the schedule release show returns right here on ESTV. Welcome back to the SFL Season 19 schedule release show. Here's some things unique to Season 19 in the SFL. 3 teams will play 3 straight road games. Canton, weeks 9 through 12. They also have a bye in there. And then Fort Worth, weeks 4 through 7, they have a bye in there. San Diego, weeks 4 through 7, they have a bye in there. But San Diego's road trip, Mike, particularly difficult. We'll talk about it a little bit more later. But at Florida, at Denver, and at Mexico City, we'll see the Mavericks face 6 of the league's 18 champions. That is absolutely brutal. Vegas and Vancouver end the season with 4 of 5 on the road, leaving just 1 home game after week 9. The 2 will play 1 combined season 18 playoff team during that stretch. So while there's a lot of road games, there's not necessarily the top competition in that stretch. 4 teams will have both byes before week 9, the earliest byes possible. That's Seattle, Queen City, Charleston, and Minnesota. We'll talk bye strategy in a minute, Mike, and what you would prefer as a coach. But in my view, that gives them the least amount of games with the most amount of progression, but to each their own. San Diego begins with 5 of 6 on the road. We talked about that. Minnesota has the next most early road games, 4 of 6, and Seattle, by the way, does too. We just touched on the Central Division. Their double division matchups get started so late. Indy and Minnesota playing twice after Week 10. Or after Week 9, rather, and then Sioux Falls, Tulsa playing twice after Week 8. And another interesting part of Minnesota's schedule, they have 6 home games, but 4 of them are against Season 18 playoff teams. That's a rough home stretch, trying to get the home crowd excited about the new team, and then they play 2 on the road as well. And then Seattle also has a 4-game homestand in weeks 10 through 13. So let's start with the buys, Mike. Well, what do you like as a as an owner, as a general manager, right? What do you like to see out of bye weeks?
Well, being that Houston, I think our bye week is after week 4, and I think again after week 8. And I think that's a good balance from the standpoint of week after week 9 and after week 4. But I think it's a good balance. I think it gives your coaches a chance to take a break, from the grind of the season and scouting. Gives y'all your scouts a break. So it's a good balance there. You got 4 games and 4 games, and then then a break. So it's a good balance, and you get a week for these guys, the opportunity to progress. And like I said, get some rest as well. So I think I kind of like the balance, at least the way it broke for us. And I think I would prefer it that way.
Yeah, balance is one way to look at it, right? You'd ideally like to see a schedule broken up 4-4-4, right? You don't really get too burned out over the season, or maybe you want them late. Baltimore's the only team with the latest bye structure possible, week 7 and week 12, because now you've got a really meaningful game or meaningful games 2 weeks left on the schedule, and you can recharge, right? You can kind of refresh those batteries before playoff push, and then you have the progression argument, right? Like, hey, if I've got a bye in week 1, right, which we don't have, but if I have a bye in week 1, well, I'm going to be able to get an extra week of progression in there before I play my next opponent. So it's really going to help me prepare for this matchup without necessarily giving away film on what I'm going to do. So there's lots of different philosophies on buys. And it's just interesting, the discussion as a whole. But in terms of all of these, oddities in the schedule, not every schedule can be crisp, clean, and pure. I think only a few teams, never have played 2 games on the road back-to-back, things like that. But some of these odd quirks, they can really be a pain in the butt to these teams.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. And one division I want to look at, Cam, specifically is the Pacific Division. Who out there is going to step up and challenge Vancouver? Yeah, Vancouver. They obviously have a couple of major holes to fill with Kendra Hall and Tom Pepper, but Los Angeles, man, they've done a great job of re-signing quite a few of their players from last season and a couple of free agent signings. On that roster, can they step up finally and have a complete season? Los Angeles tends to, play in spurts. I've seen cases where they start off fast, finish slow. I've seen where they've started off slow and finished fast. Can they put it together all one season and challenge Vancouver? We don't know what to expect from Seattle at this point. We don't know what their roster is going to really look like and what they're going to, totally look like over there. And plus, they're an expansion team, so we don't know what to expect. And can Portland bounce back from being on the cusp of the playoffs a couple of seasons ago and take a step forward, even with a new quarterback, and see if they can challenge over there? So that the Pacific Division to me is going to be interesting just from the standpoint of, can Vancouver finally, receive a good challenge for the championship?
One matchup we didn't talk about in terms of old faces and new places is Kendra Hall. And Kendra Hall returns to Vancouver week 12 when Canton comes to town. That's Vancouver's only home game in the month of September or in August, right, unless they make the playoffs and host a home first-round home playoff game. So that game's going to be big. Then the Motor City game, you know that the V8s are going to be fired up to host Vancouver. Christian Brown playing his old team, right? It's sort of the reverse of that. So you've got a lot of games that are emotionally impactful, right? They play Seattle in week 10, a divisional game. So there's a lot of emotions going on deep late in this season for Vancouver. And then week 14, right, at Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Los Angeles fades. They fade at the end of the season. That's always been their problem. They always start hot, but they always fade. And in these big moments against Vancouver, when they need these games either to win the division or make the playoffs, they have not been able to get that victory. But it's just another road game for the Legion. So that I just look at that last stretch for Vancouver in terms of the quirks of this schedule, the oddities of this schedule, and go, man, the teams themselves, we don't necessarily know what we're going to get out of them.
Right.
Just the sheer amount of storylines that are being developed that late in the season for Vancouver. It'll be interesting to see how they handle it as they build towards another playoff appearance.
I'll tell you what, Cam, it better be a storyline for each and every team, each and every week, because this season, it seems long when it first starts, but man, before you know it, you're in week 8 and fighting for your playoff lives. So what I've come to find out in my 4 seasons in this league, man, you better take every week seriously, and you better find a storyline that'll get you fired up every week to try to get a W.
Coming up next, Max Paul of the East Division breaks down the Florida Storm schedule, and we take a look at all of the East teams and what's interesting about their Season 19 when the schedule release show returns next on ESTV. We've got stopping by Max Paul, the Hall of Fame owner of the Florida Storm, with us to discuss the Florida Storm schedule for Season 19. Mighty, your initial thoughts?
I like it. We're playing some old friends and some new friends. The rivalry with Houston, since our inaugural season rivalry with Mexico City, we had Mexico City is the team that we've played the most since we've been in the league. This one, it feels like that even though they're not in the division, they're in the division because we played them so much. But it's all respect there and all love. I'm loving the new East, by the way, Cam, because I've been bugging you about making, kind of getting Atlanta and Atlanta, Louisiana, and Jacksonville and us all in the same grouping because just, regional proximity just made all the sense in the world to me once, Louisiana, once Gerald got Louisiana over there. So I'm just glad we're able to, put that back together. But I like it. It's nice and balanced. Up front, we get 3 out of 4 at home. On the back end, we get 3 out of 4 on the road. So hopefully we're able to build up enough equity. So if we have a slide on the back end, we're able to kind of withstand and still make it to the playoffs. But all in all, I like it. I like it much.
And Mighty, and I know this is supposed to be a schedule, talking about your schedule. I want to go back just a little bit, all the way until when Florida, then Alaska first came into the league in season 8. Man, you are a 3-time champion, and you are basically a walk-off field goal from Kramer Jackman and basically a miracle tackle from Giovanni Bolt from actually being a 5-time champion. Can you talk to us a little bit about how the league has changed and for you since season 8, and here we are now, man, of the most teams that we've ever had in this league. How has it changed for you, and how do you see things going in the future for the Florida Storm, and can you keep the run going that you have historically?
I've appreciated this entire offseason. Hashtag this: there are no bye weeks. You don't look at you don't look at schedules now and be like, oh yeah, week 8 when we got that. Week 10. You know what I'm saying? It's in the bag. None of that. With SFLM, where guys are able to kind of sharpen their coaching acumen down there and to kind of hit the ground running once they get to the SFL. Matter of fact, our former offensive coordinator, Ben Jackson, is proof in the pudding. Right? He got the coach Annapolis. He got them right, and then jumped in and hit the ground running with us, getting that offense. And Bullet got 1 MVP with Ben coaching the offense. So that should tell you how serious it is. The fact that these young guys are able to just continue to get good, for the lack of a better term, and SFLM, and in turn, the SFL is reaping the benefits. Last season, we had the most competitive season ever with 1,075,000, 8-4, 6-6 teams, right? So I could just imagine going forward, it's only going to get more competitive and more and a better product on the field, because nobody wants, nobody wants to tune in and watch 59-0, right? 70-210. Nobody trying to watch that, but you see a game that goes down in 20-19, thinking Louisiana, we're going to get y'all. You know what I'm saying? Or 24-21. Those kind of games that kind of give you ulcers as a coach and owner are great for everyone else, because the outcome is not decided till the final gun. So it's great for the league. And as for us per se, I placed the baby in Art's hands. Art is in charge of anything that happens on the field. It's all Art all the time. It's his offense, it's his defense, and I have more than enough confidence in his ability to be able to continue to keep us competitive, to keep our string of going to the playoffs alive. And once you get into the playoffs, big dog, if anybody got a chance, you get hot at the right time, you ride that, that hot streak right to the championship game, and then let the chips fall where they may.
Last question for you, Max. Refresh my memory here. Has Optimus Klein did he go back to Florida the first season that San Diego was here? Has he been back since he left?
No. You've
gone there twice, right?
I've gone there twice, yes.
He goes to Florida in week 4. He comes back. How are you going to welcome him back?
I'm going to hug him before the game and hug him after the game. But while the game's going on, it's going to be all out war. Like, we ain't friends. Between the 44 minutes inside white lines, if you're not wearing that electric blue, we ain't friends. So it is, you know what I'm saying? That's just how it goes.
Week 4, book that one. Max Paul, thanks for joining us here on the Schedule Release Show, and good luck to you in season 19.
Appreciate y'all, gentlemen, to have me on.
All right, thanks, Max.
Thanks to Max Paul for stopping by here on the Schedule Release Show. Now it's off to the rest of the East Division. We've got Atlanta, Florida, Jacksonville, Louisiana, a spicy division, Mike. And who do you want to start with?
Well, Cam, first of all, this is arguably the toughest division in the SFL. 4 perennial powerhouse teams, 4 championships in this division, a couple of championship appearances from Jacksonville as well. And I'm going to start in Jacksonville, my old team, team that drafted me 4 seasons ago. And let's get to the bottom of that schedule, Cam. Obviously, they're in a rebuild. They're going to have a new quarterback on this roster and several other new faces. But can they have, get everything together and start to mesh by the end of this season? And it's going to be a tough stretch, and they're going to need to by this time. They're going to finish with Lone Star, Arizona, at Houston and then at Atlanta, another division rivalry game. It's going to be huge down the stretch for these guys, especially if they have built up momentum leading up to this point. This finish to the season is going to be crucial for the Kings if they want to make a playoff run.
I'm going to take Louisiana here. Let's jump to this top of their schedule. At Florida, that's always a tough game. Florida, playoff team from last season. If I don't know what's going on with Denver's coaching staff, but if Vega's back at the helm, that game could get a whole lot more tougher than it looks right now. Denver is the swing team, right? In every team that plays Denver, depending upon what Denver does, could depend on if you're having a good time or not, because they're in a rebuild mode. But Jeremy Vega knows what he's doing over there. Then Louisiana hosts Lone Star. They finally get to come home, and it's against the defending runners-up and against a couple of their old players that are going to want to get that win as well. So that's a big game, emotionally draining. Then at Arizona, week 4. You don't want to go to Arizona on July 31st. Can you think of a hotter place to be than Phoenix on July 31st? It's going to be a hot one, and that's always a tough matchup. So that Louisiana front 4, pretty tough.
Yeah, and I've spent time in Arizona in July, Cam. It's not very pleasant over there. But let's start with my next team is in the East, Cam. Let's go to the Atlanta Swarm. I don't know anyone in the SFL that looks at the Atlanta Swarm and when they see them on their schedule and say, "Oh, this is going to be a cakewalk or a pushover." This is always a team that teams respect. Mainly because of Mark Chisholm over there and the squad that he puts together season in and season out, former champions in season 14. But in particular, I want to see, since this guy has missed the playoffs last season, Brian Dynasty had a solid season. It wasn't a great season, but it was definitely a good season when I look back on it. But how are these guys going to start at Arizona, as we just mentioned it, but July 11th, they get them out there and in Vegas at the convention, and then they go to Jacksonville, another division rivalry. They come to Houston, where I don't think it's much cooler in Houston in July. I think we'll be probably pushing 100
Well, they're going to be at the comforts of the Hive there because they host Houston, so they don't have to worry about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. Well, Houston's at home. Yeah, they're going to be indoors over there. But then they go to Lone Star a week later back in Texas. So, And then, as you mentioned, Denver. I mean, who knows what if Vegas back at the helm over there? So it's a tough 5, coming out the gate for Atlanta. It's going to be a test for them to see if they can get back, in their winning ways and make a playoff run in season 19.
And I'll circle it all back with Florida. Look at the middle of that schedule, week 6 through 9. It's just classics all across the schedule for Max Paul and the Storm. At Mexico City, he just mentioned that they played Mexico City more than any other team. It's always a classic. Then at Atlanta, in the division, get to play Mark Chisholm, and that's always a big game. Then they play Houston. They've had a rivalry with Houston for so long. Alaska was in their way, right? Back when they were the Alaska Storm. And so, just getting that whole rivalry back together. And then, of course, the Jacksonville game, the Battle of Florida. Right, so that whole middle of the schedule, I don't know if it's going to be the toughest, the easiest, whatever it is. But whatever it is, it's going to be must-see TV because it's Florida and it's all those games. So we're certainly looking forward to that. Coming up next, a breakdown of the South Division. Your South Division, Mike. Let's see how it all shakes out when the schedule release returns here on ESTV. Welcome back to the Schedule Release Show here on ESTV. We're talking about the South Division now. Mike St. Green's new division. Mike, start us off.
Yes, Cam, let's start up in North Texas. How about the Lone Star Glory? Played in the championship game season 19, and there's 2 games in particular that stand out to me on this schedule, and it's going to be at the bottom of the schedule, week 13 and 14. You can't get any tougher matchups than these 2. At Florida, at Mexico City, we know a lot is going to be on the line when these teams meet at the end of this schedule, man. Lone Star, I expect them to be solid and very good this season as well again. But, man, these 2 matchups coming down the stretch right there in playoff time, playoff positioning time, that's going to put them to the test.
And I don't think it's a fluke, Mike. I really don't. I think Lone Star's here to stay with what they have going on there. I'll take your Houston Headhunters. I think August pretty challenging at Louisiana, at Florida, no messing around. Arizona's the rival. So Houston's got to pick up some wins early, pick up some momentum. You're home against San Diego, at Atlanta versus Fort Worth. That's 3 of the first 4. You get Mexico City in week 2, but that's at home as well. So 3 out of the 4 at home. Houston can get rolling on the schedule and hold on as they go down the stretch and hit a little bit more of a meaty middle. Yeah,
Cam, I'm searching, looking at the schedule real hard. I'm trying to figure out where the easy wins are that we're going to get rolling with on that Houston schedule. I mean, take nothing away from San Diego. They are trying to build a roster over there as we see it at the moment. But, man, I see no easy games on that schedule. It's going to be challenging for the Headhunters.
There's no more left in the SFL. All right, Fort Worth or Mexico City, where on the map are you pinging?
Let's go over to Mexico City. And as I've touched on some of the teams at the early part of the schedule and touched on some teams late. Let's look at the middle part of that Mexico City schedule, as they have LSG in Florida. They do have San Diego mixed in there, but then they have a tough game at Las Vegas out there in the desert to play those guys. So tough middle of the schedule for Mexico City. You could argue that they are pretty light at the top, even though I'd see Houston in there as well. But Jacksonville rebuilding, they're going to get them right out the gate. And then Arizona, they did have a great free agent period over there in Arizona. But are they the Arizona from a couple of seasons ago when they made the playoffs? Are they the Arizona that we saw last season? So I could see Mexico City getting off to a good start, but right there in the middle, they're going to have some challenges.
I think Fort Worth needs some confidence builders, right, Mike? I feel like this is one of those teams that really needs a strong start. It's going to be difficult because they start with Lone Star, who they have not beaten, and then they go to Florida. And that's just to start the year off. And by the way, that Florida game's on a short week. That is a tough Monday, Friday swing. You've got the convention, and then you've got to turn around and play Florida just 4 days later. Fort Worth could quickly start in a hole. They're going to have to find some wins along the way after that. And, as we've said, there's no light games on the schedule, but you do want a team like Jacksonville, who is rebuilding a little bit. You do want them early because you don't want them to start to get downhill. Fort Worth does have them early, week 5. So Fort Worth just interesting to me because they have – I really feel like they need some positive momentum, but those first couple of games, if they could just steal one of those, I think they'd probably feel pretty good about their season start. When we come back, we chat with Michael Torillo of the Carolina Skyhawks and a great play-by-play guy here in the SFL to break down some of the most exciting matchups that he sees from a broadcaster's perspective. Then we'll break down his division in the Atlantic when the SFL Schedule Release Show returns on ESTV. We are here with Michael Torillo, a.k.a. Davidson Joseph of the Carolina Skyhawks, but SFL play-by-play Michael Torillo to most of us. Michael, how you doing?
I'm doing well, enjoying a little bit of a vacation from basically everything I'm doing at the moment to sit back and relax. But I can't wait to get back at it. SFL action coming at us in just a little under a month.
It's a happy schedule release day, and Michael, as a broadcaster, what do you look for on a day like this, a schedule release day like this?
All right. So there are two things I'm looking at whenever I look over a schedule as a whole. One, I want to see good teams playing each other. That's rematches of playoff games, teams with over 500 records playing each other, any combination of Baltimore, Vancouver, Lone Star, Louisville, that's what I'm looking for, those big hype games that'll be on the national TV schedule and will have a lot of hype around them. The other thing I'm looking for is individual storylines. We were on pace to kind of have a status quo in the SFL over the past couple of seasons. Baltimore won another title. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. And then somewhere in the background, the SFL gods just flipped the table. And we've had one of the more interesting off seasons I can remember since I've been in the SFL since season 9. Tons of players moving around, new teams, existing teams moving and changing branding. It's just been crazy. And every day it seems like there's something to talk about. So we've got no shortage of storylines, be it new faces versus old places, with teams going back, players going back and playing old teams. Playoff races. Obviously, we won't know that till later in the season, but we can speculate about what teams will be there. And then milestones, which players will be breaking records, moving up on leaderboards, doing things that have never been done before. We were talking before we started recording. Matt Wilson is under 300 passing yards away from 50K passing yards all time, and he could get it week 1 at the convention. So nothing is off the table.
And Michael, great to have you on with us as well, man. Good to see you. And as you mentioned, the player movement, the new teams, and the expected player movement that came with that, and free agency got kicked off a couple of days ago. Is there anything that stood out to you or surprised you as far as old faces in new places?
Well, the rookie defensive player of the year, King Rashid, leaving Tulsa, going to Motor City, the rebranded and moved St. Louis Gladiators. And then Tulsa and Motor City play each other week 1 of the convention. And that, I don't think that was planned. That just happened. But other than that, Tom Pepper retiring, that's a big one out of Vancouver. Vancouver losing 2 major offensive pieces in Kendra Hall and Tom Pepper as they look to get back into contention. Marcus Dunhill, one of the most legendary quarterbacks in SFL history, former MVP and champion, signing with Fort Worth as they have decided to change their quarterbacking philosophy. They've tried multiple times to go with homegrown quarterbacks developed from the SFL minor league. It hasn't worked out for the Toros. So they said, well, we're just going to go and get us a big name, and they've signed Dunhill.
You know what's crazy, Michael? Those 2 quarterbacks, Johnny Reno and the name is escaping me, Mike. Who's the
Cam Curtis.
Cam Curtis. They are now on 2 teams that will play each other week 1, Canton and Minnesota. So it's crazy out there.
And listen, all the best to those 2 and to all the new teams, Minnesota, Canton, Indianapolis, and really Motor City is kind of a refresh for an old team. So I count them in there as well. It's always difficult starting on your own if you've been, under somebody for a while and studying playbooks and all that kind of thing. And we've seen it go well, and we've seen it go poorly. And I just hope that all the new teams have success this year.
Michael, we look forward to hearing you call more games in season 19 and being with us at the broadcast meetings and every week here on the SFL network. And it should be one heck of a season for sure.
Thank you guys for having me on. Always a pleasure to talk SFL.
All right. Have a good one, Michael.
Thanks to Michael Torillo for stopping by. And boy, those Carolina Skyhawks logos look great in that new rebranding. Atlantic Division time. Mike, what part of the schedule should we be looking at?
Let's start at the beginning of the schedule for the DC Dragons. Obviously, they have the two-time defending champion Baltimore Vultures coming out of the gate, but then you could arguably say that it gets kind of light for them, and they could really take advantage of the first part of the schedule at Seattle versus Portland at home, and then Carolina. That's a pretty interesting first four, and I could see what DC could possibly if they can get by Baltimore, they could be possibly looking at 4-0 because they typically play the Vultures pretty tough as well.
Well, I'll raise you DC's fast start, and I'll give you a Carolina fast start potentially. They got LA at home, then they go to Portland. They have had Portland's number in recent years. Portland always seems to have to go to Carolina. Well, Carolina's going to Portland, but still the Fleet are still trying to find their footing in the SFL. Well, then they play Charleston, but it's at home. Then they play DC, but it's at home. Then they have at Vancouver, but it's off a bye. Then they play expansion team Seattle. So we're talking about the first half of their schedule. And if you're being an optimist with Carolina, you're looking at this and going, hey, I think we could be in pretty good shape before, we start to play the meat of the schedule, the Tulsa, the Baltimore, the Sioux Falls, those type of games.
Yeah, most definitely, Cam. Carolina, they are turning over a new leaf over there, and it's going to be interesting to see what kind of start they can get off to. And then let's slide over to the defending champions. I don't look at any specific part of their schedule and think anything in particular. They're starting off with DC, but what I question is are the rest of the teams that they're going to play for the entire schedule? Who's going to step up and challenge these guys? And of course they're challenged every season. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but who's going to step up and challenge these guys, push these guys, make these guys, even go to a higher level and try to prevent these guys from winning their third championship? Because someone's going to have to definitely do that. I just think week in and week out, these guys are head and shoulders the absolute best team in the SFL, and they've proven that over the past couple of seasons. And I'm just going to be curious as to see who's on that schedule that can step up and prove anything differently.
Anytime you've been a dynasty like Baltimore has, nobody on the schedule looks hard.
Yeah.
If you're Baltimore or looking at the schedule like we are, I want to say, is Charleston for real? Yeah. That's the question, right? I think they have taken leaps and bounds over the last couple of seasons. Jacob Clear, Jack Brown, right? Everybody's doing such a great job building that organization. They did lose some pieces this offseason, but they have reloaded correctly. Is Charleston for real? Well, we'll find out real quick. At Vancouver week 2 versus Baltimore week 6. And the reality is, Mike, is if they start 4-2, but they lose to Baltimore and Vancouver, the jury's still out, right? People are going to say, oh, well, they couldn't beat the big guns. They couldn't beat the big guns. I think this is Charleston's chance. The Vancouver game last season, oh, well, Robert Redford was hurt, right? And so a lot of people didn't give him any credit for that either. They have another chance to beat Vancouver. They have a chance to beat Baltimore. And I think those two games for Charleston may be the biggest singular two games for any team in the SFL with what I think they have to prove.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Cam. These guys have done a great job. They've signed a vast majority of their roster already. One name that's still missing that we haven't seen is Keith Swearingen. Is he going to come back over there to the Predators, or is he possibly going elsewhere? It remains to be seen. But, these guys have done a great job, and I'm looking forward to seeing that they can continue on their success over the past couple of seasons.
Coming up, Colin Northrup previews the North Division in his Motor City V8s. We take a look at all the teams in detail, and what does Johnny Pickler think about his schedule? The season 19 schedule release show is coming right back on ESTV. one of Motor City's owners, Colin Northrup, also does play-by-play here in the SFL and will be at the convention in Las Vegas with all of us. Colin, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, Cam. I was telling y'all before this started, moving into the new space, still getting adjusted to stuff. When you've been at the other place for over 20 years, as we were at the other place, you get a lot of stuff. So, you're just slowly unpacking it in phases. So, just trying to move slow.
Funny enough, Colin's talking about his home, but he's also been moving his entire organization to Detroit from St. Louis this offseason. Now the Motor City V8s, and now your schedule is out. And it's juicy, Colin. Rivalries up and down the list. What do you think of your season 19 schedule?
I'm very excited. We get a lot of interesting stuff, with Canton and, of course, London and, the history we have there. And, but I'm most excited to square off with Indianapolis, the two car teams. I know when the initial division stuff sort of came out and everything was settled, I know Chad was like, oh man, I wish we were in the same division. Now we get to play now. We just have to come up with the name of the rivalry, I guess. I have some names in mind, but we need to get together.
And Colin, Cam just mentioned, you're relocating from St. Louis to Motor City, Detroit. I'm actually going to miss the Gladiators. I had some very great conversations with you guys a few years ago when I was coming into the league. But what went into to the move, and how did you come to settle on the Motor City V8s?
Well, it was never a question of were we or were we not going to move, because we were looking for sponsorship opportunities out of the St. Louis area, but we could never just find them. And once the Bank Michigan opportunity piped up, and my dad happened to mention it, it was a pretty easy sell. But as far as the name goes, it was a more extensive process. But there was about 5 of us or so that all agreed on the name. And I remember when we showed my dad the list, and Motor City V8s stood out to him right away. It was almost like he'd been metaphorically slammed up against the wall. It stood out to him that much. He kept pointing to me, he was all excited, oh, look at that one, look at that one.
If he medically felt like he was slammed against the wall, I'd be very concerned for your dad. So I'm glad that was not happening. I felt like I was slammed against the wall a little bit, Colin, on the free agency show when I found out that Christian Brown, your old quarterback, was going to go play in Vancouver, and Tom Pepper had retired. Now, you're a broadcaster. You've been calling Vancouver games for years, and Brown obviously wanted to go in a different direction. That's on the schedule. Week 13, Vancouver comes to town, and y'all famously beat or was very close to beating Vancouver in a playoff game. Y'all have played some classics over time. What are your first thoughts on Christian Brown being back on the schedule?
It'll be very interesting. Christian was liked by all the members of the team, but ultimately the creative vision differences between what the coaching staff wanted him to do and what he wanted to do offensively, they just butted heads. And, he wanted to try and spread his wings a little bit more and, get a little more hands-on in the coaching. So, it was upsetting to once again have to find another quarterback, but we have a solution to that problem that I think is foolproof this time.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing what Motor City does this season. The North gets is just a very interesting, fascinating division with Queen City, Canton, and London. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Colin, we wish you all the best this season in season 19. And, hey, we'll hear you and your dad talking about Rick Meter in no time.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right, thanks for joining us, Colin.
You're welcome.
Always a pleasure to talk to Colin Northrup of the Motor City V8s, and can't wait to hear him call a game in Las Vegas at HyperX Arena. To the North Division, Mike, and I am a gentleman. I always let you start first. Go ahead.
Well, the low-hanging fruit that I could probably pick are the London Knights, but I won't go there. I'm going to tell you the most intriguing player that I think has come into this division. And I've been following this guy for quite a long time throughout his SFL career, and that's O.J. Bruin going over to the Queen City Corsairs. I'm interested to see, not so much of who Queen City are they going to play. I think as far as schedules go, probably the strength of schedule as of right now is probably a little light for everyone in this division in particular. But I'm curious to see how O.J. Bruin is going to perform over there. Can he, make a name for himself with the Corsairs? I know he's back in his home state of New York. I know he's happy about that. And I want to see how O.J. is going to perform. I want to see if he can possibly turn into the all-star that I expected him to be a couple of seasons ago.
Listen, Canton better be ready, because they get a couple of weeks to start the season where it's anybody's game. They get two expansion teams, Minnesota, Indianapolis. No other team gets two expansion teams to start the season. You better be ready, because after that, they host London, who we expect to be better because of, division or schedule or however it falls, right? But London retained a lot of players, and so we expect them to take a step forward. Then they have at Tulsa. I think we have high expectations out of Tulsa. There's no reason to think otherwise. They did lose some key pieces defensively, but this offense stayed intact. You got JQ and Douglas Brown and Gabriel Manning and all that. So we expect Tulsa to be good. And then Canton has a bye, and then Sioux Falls, right? You don't want to mess with Sioux Falls. Right? So it gets difficult quickly for Canton, but not immediately. Canton's got to at least get one of those first two, preferably both, as they enter in a tough part of their schedule.
Yeah, and Cam, let's slide over to go over across the pond to my old team. I think this team, Cam, right now, I think they can potentially have a very, very good season, probably the best season in that franchise's history. I'm just looking at their schedule and just being honest about it with what London is bringing back. All those guys, they seem to mesh last season and come into their own. I expect them to do nothing more than to do the same thing this season. Looking at their schedule, week 2, at home against Tulsa, and then they travel to Vancouver for a game in week 8. But after that, these guys, it's a relatively easy schedule. As far as easy schedules, quote unquote, easy schedules go in this league. But I'm basing that upon what they have coming back. These guys are playing 3 expansion teams this season, so the sky's the limit for London this season. I'm expecting great things from them.
Motor City's a team that's made the playoffs 3 times. They have never been able to get over the hump and win a playoff game. So they're trying to take that next step. And I think the key to Motor City's schedule is, are the expansion teams any good, right? Are they able to really burst onto the scene and be winners? Because Motor City does not have the advantage of playing any expansion team early like a lot of teams do. And as expansion teams get more progression on players, as they get rolling, as they start to gel as an organization, right, they start to become spoilers. They start to be, and it's not just expansion teams, it's teams towards the bottom of the standings that generally even up to the competition as the season goes along. For Motor City, they play Seattle in week 12, Canton in week 9, Indy in week 7, Minnesota in week 5. They play all 4 expansion teams, but none of them are significantly early. So is the back half of their schedule going to be super easy because it's full of expansion teams that are having a tough time? Or is it going to be more challenging than we think because those teams are for real and here to stay? So that's the interesting thing about Motor City for me.
Yeah, Motor City, they are doing a slight rebuild as well. I won't say a rebuild, but definitely a retool of who they are. Obviously, they rebranded from St. Louis over to Detroit, Motor City, and and with that, they have a couple of roster spots they have to fill on that squad as well. Quarterback, as we know, and a couple of receiver spots as well. So, but as you mentioned, the work is cut out for them, getting a lot of those expansion teams late. But also, with who are they going to probably be bringing in, they can grow together as well, and maybe they could take advantage of some things late in the season.
We caught up with Johnny Pickler to talk about the North Division and the London Knights. And when we come back after that interview, after the break, we'll take a look at the Pacific. We've got lightning round, and we'll close the show. You're watching the Schedule Release Show right here on ESTV. We are here with the quarterback of the London Knights, Johnny Pickler, who's just, I think, a little less than 100 yards away from being the 20th quarterback ever to in terms of all-time passing yards. Johnny's about to pass a few that have retired, and we're looking forward to that early on in the season and looking forward to seeing him back on the field. How you doing, Johnny?
Pretty good, gentlemen. Glad to be here with you. Exciting schedule release show. Excited to be back here.
Mike, I think you should start this one with your former teammate. yeah, that's good, man. What's up, QB1, man? Good to see you, man, and have a chance to chat with you. It's been a while. Man, over in London, you're going into your third season in London, and of course, ever since you've been there, this team has had nothing but success. Has progressed. The 2 seasons that you were there, going into your third season. With free agency starting a couple of days ago, you guys have managed to bring back majority of that roster. You did have one free agent signing, Weary. What's the expectations in London now that you can see the schedule and see what you guys have ahead of you?
Well, even prior to seeing the schedule, the expectations are as high as they've ever been here in London. I had, kind of a group talk with the entire team this offseason, made it clear very early on that I wasn't going anywhere, and I didn't want any of my brothers to go anywhere, so I know we lost you and Chad to ownership, or I'm sure you guys would have stuck around too, but we're happy for you guys and getting your own teams and, looking forward to see what you guys do. But, expectations are huge. We're considering this our window, here in London. Mm-hmm. Teams only have, small windows and they come and they go. And the fact that we were able to retain 20 players and we're in a really crazy off season where, a lot of teams kind of naturally took a step backwards due to the expansion losses. There was a lot of depth that was plucked from teams and even star players that were plucked from teams. We knew that if we could just hold down the fort and stay together, that we would probably naturally take a step forward, and we feel we have one of the strongest rosters coming into this season. We think we were, sneakily one of the best teams at the end of last season. We went on a run where we won 8 out of 10 games before we got knocked out in the playoffs. And we feel like we're that caliber coming into this year. And, we're going to get a little bit more dynamic on offense. And the defenders have really been able to keep their value, especially the defensive backs. I think we have some of the highest paid defensive backs in the league right now. So they're going to want to change the storyline of London giving up a lot of points. I think we have some playmakers back there. But expectations are simple. It's claim the North, and we consider it a failure. I mean, I personally am going to consider it a failure if we're not a top 4 team and we don't have a first round bye in the playoffs.
Johnny, now that the schedule's out, what are you most excited about on the schedule? And as a veteran quarterback who knows this league very well, what are you looking for on a day like schedule release? What are the things that you like to see and the things you don't?
I like to see home games against tough defenses, but you can't ignore the fact that, the storyline for week 1 in Vegas is going to be against Chad Rowland's Indianapolis Ramblers. So that's going to be a fun one for us. It's going to be fun, flying out of Vegas with that 1-0 feeling. I look at the schedule and, I see no reason that, our goals this year should not be accomplished, that we shouldn't be considered a championship contender, and that, we shouldn't be winners of the North and be a top 4 team in this league. That being said, there's no game, no team you can sleep on. It's an any given Sunday type of league. And you can't, what I've learned as a veteran quarterback is that, you can't go into any game, underestimating your opponent and being overconfident. I had my share of those days. And so now it's just about, sticking to the game plan and, keeping the team together and going out there and executing. But we got high hopes for the season. It's an exciting schedule, but it's nothing to be, you're not going to find me in the camp of anyone that's, feels like we got too difficult of a schedule or anything like that. I've never been one of those. I like to see who we got and get ready for week 1.
Well, the new North gets interesting by the day with all these different signings and all the storylines, like you said, that have been developing this offseason. It's going to be a fun division to watch. Johnny, thanks for joining us on the schedule release show, and good luck in season 19.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.
Hey, good. Luck, Johnny, man. I'll be rooting for you guys unless we meet in the playoffs.
All right. Sounds good, Mike.
All right, brother.
Congratulations, bud.
All right. Thank you, brother.
Back here to break down the Pacific Division with my best friend, Mike St. Green, and like 14 other people just got really upset that I said that just now. Pacific Division. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, let's start in Portland. I was going to say let's start up north, but we're in the Pacific, right? Yeah, duh. But yeah, we're going to start up in Portland. These guys are looking for another quarterback again this season. Are they turning into the Fort Worth Toros, the St. Louis Gladiators, and always looking for a quarterback with this team? That remains to be seen. This is going to be their third in franchise history this season. Whoever they decide to bring in, as we don't know at this point, but. Still intriguing. They still have Ezekiel Love. They still have a great portion of that defense coming back. That's always been pretty tough and great at getting turnovers. But let's look at the start of that schedule, man. That is a tough way to break in a new quarterback at Vancouver, at home against Carolina, at DC's always tough defense, and then also at Baltimore, and we know how great and swarming that defensive front seven is. So that's going to be tough for a rookie quarterback to get off to a great start. But one thing he has to work with is a great running back in Ezekiel Love, and we'll see if Portland can get back on track and try to make strides for the playoffs as they did a couple of seasons ago.
Hey, Portland gets Vancouver in week 1, and Vancouver doesn't know what Portland's going to do. So that's kind of an advantage. And then the last time they played Baltimore, they took them to overtime. So you just never know. Los Angeles, it's all about the fade, right? We talked about it earlier in the broadcast. I don't think LA is going to fade this year. I really don't. Look at the schedule at Portland week 9. Then they have a bye. Then they play Queen City. Then they have London at home. They go to Canton in a meaningful game against some old friends. And then they have Vancouver. I think this is LA's opportunity to kind of end that curse, if you will, of falling apart late in the season and make a run. So that's the most interesting part of LA's schedule to me.
Yeah, Cam, LA, we're going to see if they can fade, going to fade again this season. And I think a key to them is not turning the ball over. If they can get a strong ground game and not turn it over, they're going to be a tough team to deal with, as they typically are at different points in the season. And I'm going to go with the mystery team, Cam. The logo looks mysterious, and they've been keeping things under wraps. We don't know much about this team other than we know Ethan Kai is the owner. We know Jalen Wells is the GM over there, and but that's pretty much all we know at this point. They did sign a couple of good receivers in the free agent market, but that's about it. But these guys. They're going to have their work cut out for them throughout the schedule. A stretch there with London, Vancouver, Canton, and Motor City. Mid to late in that season, maybe Seattle could get some things going. And after they build this roster and can get some their young guys over there, progressed and growing, and we can see what they're going to turn into. But the thing is, they're a mystery. We don't know what they're going to bring to the table, and neither do the other teams that they're facing. So that could play to their advantage.
I think Vancouver gets some help, considering they're going to have a new quarterback under center, because they start with 3 of 4 at home. Portland, Charleston, LA are those games. They're tougher stretch on the road. After week 4, Mike, they don't have a division home game, right? Their last 2 division games are on the road, and they've got some tough games on the road at Motor City and at Seattle in the division, but it comes later. And I think that by that point, Vancouver will have sort of everything in front of them and rolling towards another deep playoff run. So I think Vancouver may have gotten a break early, and that's a nice look at the Pacific. And finally, to close out the show, your big takeaway from the season 19 schedule, Mike.
It's just the newness of it, Cam. I mean, we have 28 teams. Like, we're going to play the most games we ever played in any given season, 168 games. I'm just excited about all of it. The new faces, old faces, and new places. As I mess it up as well. But but it's going to be very intriguing to see how all these teams eventually come together by the time we get to July 11th. With the draft picks, and I'm excited for all the draft picks as well. That's going to get an opportunity to be a part of season 19. So the entire schedule is really, intriguing to me in a nutshell. I just think we're going to see a lot of things that we have never seen before, and it's going to be exciting.
Thanks to everyone in the SFL who makes every season possible. It's going to be super exciting. Games on Fridays this season. We've even got one Thursday night slipped in there. We got all 14 teams playing on Monday, July 11th in Las Vegas. It's going to be so much fun. For Mike St. Green, I'm Cameron Irvine. This has been the Schedule Release Show on ESTV, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks for the draft. It's just, wow, the season's almost here. We'll see you then. Thanks so much for watching.